Hi, you probably clicked on this video because you want to make a D&D campaign but don't really know where to start. Maybe you have an idea, a villain, a plot in your head, but you don't know how to push it all together and make a cohesive campaign. That's what I want to show you today. Now, I'm actually going to make a D&D campaign along with you. Now, I personally probably wouldn't copy all my ideas. Well, I guess I would, but if you're you, make your own unique story. This should be yours. Now, I just said the word story, but we're going to kind of throw that away because you're not really creating a story. You're creating a set of circumstances that allow your players to kind of write their own story. You're just kind of the arbiter in the fact that you're going to be pushing these plot points and plot hooks towards them for them to react to. For me personally, I like to have a tangible world to actually start creating my plot hooks within. So I'll always start by creating the world, the map, some locations in my head, or write it down, draw a map, and then start going into the plot hooks. For the campaign I'll be creating today, I know that my player characters are going to wash up on the shore after a shipwreck, and they're going to find themselves on a completely wild, untamed island filled with goblins, other magical creatures, and very little to no humans at all will cross their paths. So, what does this mean when we look at creating the world? Well, I know we're not going to have any big man-made cities. However, there can be some massive goblin encampments that could be interesting. Maybe they're not super hostile to the players. That would be an interesting dynamic from any other fantasy setting we typically see. So let's just start by creating a map, something that we can kind of see our player characters in and experience. Okay, so we need to make a map. But how do we do that? It seems so hard. How do we make a fantasy world map? That seems impossible. Let's see, we know we want an island, so let's draw an island. I like coves on my island, so let's just start off with a cove. Nice, and let's just see what happens. Boom, there's my island. I am not a professional artist by any stretch of the imagination. This is just a good jumping off point to help us visualize what our world can be. Now, let's add a few important locations to kind of let our characters play off of. Things we know that we want to kind of tie into the plot eventually. Things like maybe let's put a big goblin town over here. We'll do like just a little hut. And we'll make that our little goblin town. Please do not judge me and my drawings. It kind of looks like a tree with a face, but we'll get the point. We'll name it something like Goblinville. No, Goblin Gog. More interesting. So there's our first point of interest. Goblin Gog. A big goblin city that we're going to have a lot of interactions with probably throughout the story. Now, what else can we have? Let's add some mountains. There's probably going to be, let's add what's more interesting than a mountain? A volcano, obviously. So that's going to be right here in the center. Just a big volcano. Do a little bit of that action. Again, it looks kind of like a tree. Let's maybe just like, ooh, that's lava dripping off. Yeah, you get it, right? Okay, boom. Volcano, wow. Volcano, what should we name it? I don't know. Mount Glorvis. Mount Glorvis is this volcano's name. Why is it named Mount Glorvis? Because that's what the local goblins named it. And let's just say the goblins are slightly more civilized than your normal goblin troop, I guess. So they have made a map. They have maybe our characters find this right away once they kind of wash up on shore. Maybe there's a little kind of billboard with all this information on it. Who knows? We're still exploring what we really want out of this campaign. But this is helping us form some ideas, and this is helping us, kind of understand what's going on with our own world. Now, again, you might have a map already made. You might already have your whole setting kind of thought out already. This is literally, we're just starting from scratch. I have a base kind of idea of how I want them to start. I want them to start on a pirate ship. Maybe they'll be flying in, or not flying. They're going to be sailing in. There we go. They're going to be sailing in. Maybe their boat crashes somehow. Some mysterious circumstance crashes their boat. They wash up on the cove. Maybe they're the sole survivors of their entire ship and their crew. Now they're in this mysterious place. I mean, they got to find out what's happening. How did they end up on this island? And you'll send out some plot hooks. They'll grab onto it because guess what? They probably want to be playing this game with you. Unless you suck, but hopefully you don't. But yeah, so you're going to throw in plot hooks, and maybe eventually they'll run into Mount Glorvis or Goblin Gog, which, they will, because you can kind of, control that. But yeah, overall, your setting does not really matter that much as I hate to say it. What matters is that your players are going to have fun within it. So, like, Goblin Gog, it's a stupid name, but it's kind of funny. So, I mean, it's going to be great for the players. They're going to be like, Goblin Gog, that's stupid. We should go check it out. Mount Glorvis had also stupid. If you can kind of sense a theme with how I build worlds here. But yeah, we'll probably just add a third, main location we have for the beginning here. Let's add something up here. Let's see. Maybe like Big Cave. Big Cave. Maybe this is like a different faction. Like the goblins are here. There's going to be another big mountain with a big cave entrance. Maybe this is like where all the trolls live. This is where all the trolls are, and they're kind of fighting. Maybe there's a political turmoil between the trolls and the goblin. Maybe the players will get swept up in that. Maybe they want to, discover that, explore that a little more, see if maybe one side is being treated unfairly, or maybe one side is right or bad. Whatever. You'll figure that out as you go. What should we name Trollland? We're gonna not do Trollland, even though that's a great idea. Let's do Trollington. That's way better. Oops, forgot the R. Trollington. Beautiful and genius as well. So we have Trollington, Mount Glorvis, and Goblin Gog, 3 staples in fantasy world building. But yeah, let's move on now that we have our 3 main points of interest that we want in our world. You may be asking, okay, we have these points of interest, but what happens to our plot? What is even going on here? And I was just kind of brainstorming quickly, and maybe the captain of the ship they were originally on survives, but they don't know that. Maybe he gets captured or voluntarily goes to Goblin Gog or Trollington, and eventually, because he is a captain, he's going to be charismatic. He works his way up the ranks and becomes someone very important in either of these 2 societies. Now, he can be good, he can be bad. I think it's more interesting if he's bad. Maybe in session 0, you kind of introduce them. That's like where you're on the ship, and at the end of session 0, maybe you crash. And, you don't know what's going on, and then it starts waking you up on an island. Everybody's gone, a couple dead bodies surrounding you. Can't find the captain's body. So, eventually, maybe he's kind of the proprietor of the strife, the political strife between Goblingog and Trollington. Like, he craves this power that he's getting here, and he doesn't want that to go anywhere. So maybe he's our BBEG, Big Bad Evil Guy. So we have our Big Bad Evil Guy. We'll call him Captain Camelot. That's kind of cool. And let's say he goes to Goblingog. And Goblingog recruits him. So they get Captain... what did I say? Camelot? Captain Camelot is the BBEG, and he is influenced Goblingog to maybe doing things they don't necessarily want to do. Maybe they, are so entranced by his charisma that they don't really know what's going on. They don't know what they're doing. So that could be an interesting conflict. The goblins that Captain Camelot is ruling over don't really know what they're doing or why they're doing it. They just know this guy's kind of, interesting, so let's hear him out for right now. So, yeah, that gives you a couple options here. Player characters could go to Trollington, see what's going on there, see if they can get their help, or they could just go straight to Goblingog, see what's going on. Now, you always got to tease your BBEG, which you are doing which I'm doing in Session 0. Just, because they know him. He's the captain of their ship. But how do we do that after Session 0? So maybe sometime within Session 1, they hear a familiar voice, the voice of Captain Camelot, with a bunch of goblins surrounding him. They can put a name to that voice. They clearly know him. He's their captain. You don't need to make them do a check or anything for that. But that kind of starts off. Maybe they run after them. Maybe you can't catch them. Maybe they do catch them. That's up to you. That's up to maybe, you give them some rolls and they decide, what actually happens. The dice is king, of course. So now we have our map. We have our world. We have our BBEG. But let's actually kind of dive deeper into what the plot will eventually look like. There are a few ways to go about your plot. You can either, you have a beginning, middle, and an end. You're not sure how you get there. Or you can just kind of have a beginning. Let the story develop. Obviously you have your BBEG. You got your main villain, your main problem that your player characters need to solve. But you don't need to have it scripted, like what will happen. The most exciting part about D&D is not knowing what's going to happen next. I think it's fun when you have to think on your feet and think of a new plot point as quick as you possibly can, no matter how stupid it can kind of be. For this video in particular, we're going to make sure to just focus on the beginning. We're going to make sure the player characters are well oriented within the world. And we're also going to give them a nice plot hook to grab onto if they so choose, which they will, and if they don't, they suck. We know how we're going to get them oriented. Maybe they find this map on like a billboard or, like a bulletin board on the beach somewhere after they wash up on shore. But what's our plot hook going to be? What are we going to do for that first initial plot hook to really get your players hooked? Well, we know we want to introduce our characters to Captain Camelot, their old ship captain. Maybe we just do that right off the bat. Maybe they hear that voice right off the bat. Now, we also have to wonder, maybe we don't want him to be seen. I think I like that idea of they know he's out there, but we've never laid eyes on him. And then one day he appears and they're like, oh my god, yeah. Maybe we don't even hear about him for 1 or 2 sessions after this. And then they're like, oh my god, yeah, remember, he's alive. And he's leading the goblins now within like a couple days. Something interesting is automatically going to be going through their heads. And, maybe they give you some good ideas on how to progress the story forward. Alright, so we know how we want this campaign to start. We want them to wash up on shore, find the map, and then we want to introduce that BBEG, which they obviously don't know about yet. But we're going to have them overhear their captain, a familiar voice in this strange, interesting world. And then we're going to make sure that they don't see him. Now, how are we going to do that? Maybe we, in session 0, make sure that Captain Camelot is a mage. He knows how to cast teleportation spells, or maybe the goblins are able to do that. But either way, I want to make sure that he's not seen. Now, we have our 2 elements. We have an element of they have this map, and they see a place called Goblin Gog. They also heard goblins and their ship captain talking. So they can probably assume that they went to Goblin Gog, which is right there on their map, with this stupid name. Now, what does that mean? Are they going to effortlessly go straight to Goblin Gog? No, I'm not going to let that happen. They're going to find some interesting characters, some interesting hooks along the way. This is their main quest, the first thing they're going to get. They know their priority. Of course, that can probably change, and it probably will, because they're beings with agency. But yeah, we're going to make sure to get them hooked as quickly as possible. So just a few tips on how to make quests interesting, not just your main one, but all the side quests they'll probably go on as well. Make sure they are never repetitive. Don't repeat a same quest over and over. And there always needs to be a reason for them to go on these quests, whether you reward them with gold, magic items, or just like a piece of the story. Just make sure they are worth the player's time. If they get to the end of something and they get practically nothing, I mean, what's the point of that? Like, it's not fun to get nothing, man. It's like you want stuff. I've made the error in the past of my players aren't strong enough to face the BBEG yet. They need to fight more stuff and just keep fighting until they level up and level up and level up. That is the most boring thing that could possibly happen. That's how one of my campaigns died, because for some reason I'm just like, they're not strong enough. They're only level 10. They can't handle this guy yet. But dude, like, how dumb can I be? Like, just, it's not fun doing that. Like, people want to hear stories. That's like our whole thing as humans. Like, things need to matter. Whether that's towards the plot, I want to say towards getting stronger, but not in like leveling up just for like, XP reasons. Like, finding an interesting weapon, but like in an intriguing dungeon that has a bunch of puzzles in it. Like, that's fun. That's a fun thing to do. Just fighting combat encounter after combat encounter after combat encounter, that's not fun. So don't do that. And also, never trap your party. Like, trapping them can be interesting and can provide some critical thinking from them, but like, it has to be escapable. You can't make an unescapable box with yourself having no plan on how they get out, because like, that is just like, you don't want to ever tell your party the answer either. Like, if they have an idea, yes, and like, never try not to say no as much as possible. Like, obviously you need to have some kind of control. Like, if it gets ridiculous, like if somebody says, and then I find this awesome sword that can kill everything in one shot, like, obviously no you didn't. But like, it's like, can I look for an interesting shaped rock that might be the key to this door? And it's like, okay, sure, roll investigation, I guess. And then if it's a high roll, maybe they just find it. Maybe like, it's just a conveniently placed rock is there and it happens to fit the shape of the keyhole. Why not? If they roll well enough, why not? But like, if things are too ridiculous, kind of be like, it doesn't really work out. But don't dissuade them from thinking, creatively. Let your players kind of feel out their characters, let them experience who they are, and then, play off them. Like, if they're going a certain direction, find the plot point or a plot hook that you can put over there to get them kind of hooked even more and more. But I think that's pretty much it for starting your D&D campaign. Just personally, I wouldn't plan the whole thing out straight away. Just let it develop over time. You're going to want a through line. You're going to want, obviously, an end in sight or an end goal in mind. But again, don't force them down a path they don't want to go on. Let them forge their own path. Just give them the steps and kind of the jet fuel to pursue that. Okay, thanks.